Hi everyone, welcome to the 9th episode of Tower Tales, the ATC podcast. This is your host Mahesh Sharma, joining you from Hyderabad, as always, to bring you the untold stories of veteran air traffic controllers from the Indian Air Force. In each episode, I delve into their experiences, sharing their real stories, challenges, and the critical roles they played towards ensuring safety and security of our skies. Get ready to explore the fascinating world of ATC with these men and women who were highly radioactive once upon a time. This episode is different from the previous ones because our guest today is not a controller, but a pilot who will provide us a perspective about ATC and from the operator's point of view. Our guest today is an alumnus of National Defence Academy who joined the Indian Air Force as a fighter pilot in 1969. He has been a qualified flying instructor, commanded 2 frontline fighter bases, and served as the Deputy Commandant of the Air Force Academy in Hyderabad, among many other field and staff appointments. In 2001, the Air Commodore was awarded the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal by the President of India. In the same year, he was nominated for a course at the prestigious National Defence College in New Delhi. He superannuated in the rank of Air Commodore in 2004 after an enriching career spanning 35 years. In March 2006, he set up a ground aviation academy for aspiring pilots, collaborating with flying schools in India and overseas. He's authored 3 books of short stories called The Raindrops, The Accidental Pilot, and The Cry of a Fractured Heart. He holds an MPhil in Defense and Strategic Studies with a major in disaster management and currently lives in Pune. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome Air Commodore AD Chhibbar, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, to the studios today. Good morning, Air Commodore Chibber. Sir, it's such a great pleasure to connect with you once again. I have very fond memories of my interaction with you when you were commanding one of our forward bases in the east, that is Air Force Station Hashimara. So it gives me particular pleasure to connect with you, and thank you once again for accepting my request and making time, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Much, Mahesh, for getting me on to this show, which you have been hosting so beautifully over the past few months. And I really appreciate the work that you are doing towards making people aware of aviation and its associated issues. It's very nice to reconnect with you after a long time.
Thank you so much, sir. And your kind of background with such a wide and vast experience that you've had, not only as commanding officers of 2 frontline bases, but also been in the NDC and the Deputy Commandant of the most prestigious Air Force Academy. I am very interested in getting to know more from you. So let's begin with taking a peek into what brought you into Air Force.
So it's a very interesting story. If I take a few minutes on this, you'll be surprised if I tell you that, right from the beginning, because my father was in the army and my inclination was to join the army. And when I appeared for the NDA examination, my first choice was army, second was navy, and third was Air Force. After I cleared the SSB for the Army and Navy, I was asked, since I had opted for Air Force as my third choice, would I like to go to Dehradun for the SSB of, the Air Force, the PABT, etc.
Yes, sir.
I said, why not? A new place. I hadn't been to Dehradun earlier. I went there, and after I got back and the merit list came out, I was surprised that in the the Army and Navy had a separate merit list and the Air Force had a separate merit list.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as luck would have it, I was a little higher up in the Air Force merit list compared to the Army Navy. And when my joining instructions came to NDA, it came as an Air Force cadet. And maybe somebody was wanting me to join the Air Force, though I had an option in NDA to switch to Army in my third term. But by then I was so firmly tuned towards the Air Force that I refused to change. And the moment I got into the Air Force, environment, to me, Air Force meant being a fighter pilot, nothing else.
Yes.
Even if I were to be, reflighted for, any reason, I would have still remained, favoring the fighter pilot. So that's how I became a pilot, a fighter pilot, and that's why I call myself the accidental pilot, a pilot who became one by accident.
Yes, sir. I think I can quite resonate with that because those days we used to have parental claims, and since my grandfather was in the army, I also aspired to join army initially, but then got into the Air Force. But that brings me to another aspect of yours. You've written three books. One is, of course, The Accidental Pilot. Which are the other two, sir?
My first book was Raindrops. In
Mhm.
fact, Raindrops was a story I wrote while I was a flying officer or a flight lieutenant in the Air Force. And it was a story about, how a fighter pilot, if he's not concentrating on his job and he gets distracted by extraneous reasons, that he can get into a situation which may be a little difficult to recover from.
Yeah.
So the Raindrops, in fact, all my three books are a collection of short stories.
Mhm.
Some are based upon my Air Force experiences, some are fictional, and a few ad hoc poems there in the books. So
Great, sir. That would tempt me to give the links of those books in the channel so that those who are interested can also get
sure,
to read them.
sure, sure.
But like you said, when we talk about aviation and particularly military aviation and Air Force, I think the main subject is the aviator, the pilot, because he's the one who's actually fighting the front like infantry, though the stakes are different. And I was, in fact, I'm also happy to tell you that you're the first uh, pilot in my podcast because I realized that it won't be complete without having the uh, view of an aviator as far as the air traffic control, military air traffic control is concerned.
Wow.
So, so thank you so much, sir. And that brings me to the aspect of we are primarily going to look at the air traffic control in this episode from aviator's point of view. And I'm lucky to have you since you're a fighter pilot, and fighter flying is much, much different as compared to other things. Of course, they have their inherent strengths. So going forward, I would like to know from you that as an aviator, what is the most important factor when it comes to air traffic control? Because I know when you're going to go for flying, for you, and especially when we talk of trainee pilot or others, they would be more focused in preparing for the mission, planning, doing whatever exercise they're supposed to do. But how does ATC affect the overall mission? If everything goes well, probably nothing occurs. But if something doesn't go well, it actually interferes with the mission completion or successful mission. So, what are your perspectives on this?
See, I would say that as far as air traffic controller is concerned, he is a very important person in the air operations. While we say that the Air Force is essentially pilots are there and that's why the Air Force is there, but without the support system that is there in the Air Force for the pilot to sustain himself both during peacetime and during operations, there has to be some kind of an interface with a person who is able to understand the terminologies, understand the operations per se, and who is a better person than the air traffic controller to know these things.
Mhm.
I would say that a pilot and a air traffic controller are like brothers in arms. When you see everything holistically, the air traffic controller emerges as the better of the best.
Mhm. Okay.
So the bonding that a controller and a pilot have that becomes very, very essential in the success of any operations or any mission.
I get your point, sir. So, but then that brings me to another aspect. The military aviation is different because it's military tactical flying, and whereas the if you look at the air traffic services procedures, they have been designed by ICAO, and they're cast in stone, very rigid. So what happens is sometimes the military controller is in a dilemma as far as the tactical freedom is concerned and following the procedures laid down by the Civil Aviation Authority organization is concerned. So you must have come across during your experience as a pilot that sometimes the air traffic controllers would be rigid in some areas because they have to follow certain procedures. At the same time, they also have to be flexible when it comes to military or tactical flying. What has been your experience? Did you find that the military controllers with Elan have been able to perform that dual role without compromising the safety?
Yes, I would, go a little more into it and say that air traffic controller, a military air traffic controller, can adapt himself to civil aviation quite easily. But the other way around is a little difficult proposition. The reason being that the military discipline in flying is something different. When I speak about discipline, I'm talking about what you just mentioned, the tactics. The operational requirements are different. When I joined the Air Force,
Yes,
the
sir.
navigational aids, the radio aids that were available for the pilot and the controller both were, for want of a better word, I would say, were primitive in nature.
Yes.
More, of the World War kind.
Yes.
But as the Air Force evolved and we progressed towards, modernization, the new, technology which came in, it brought in a lot of changes in the methodology with which the controller was, I would say, better armed
Yes, sir.
to, cater for the various situations in the air. And I think a lot of improvements took place. And by the time I retired from the Air Force was on its way to one of the best gadgets for the controlling.
Yes, sir. Because if I recall from my time, some of the controller interpreted letdowns used to be either visually assisted or they would be QGH or ground controlled approach or SRE approach. Any remembrance from that period, sir, where you would like to bring out how a controller, with the help of the controller interpreted letdown, help you in a difficult mission or any such recollection from your past?
Yeah, you see, the first before I tell you about the situation, I must tell you that one of the qualities of a good controller
Yes, sir.
is that he should be able to give instructions in a concise, precise manner with clarity. There should be no hesitation on part of the controller in his communication.
Mhm.
That is, I think, one of the very important aspects. And then the ability to visualize things.
The complete air picture, so to say.
In the air, a pilot is always told that he should be situationally aware, and that is what is required of a controller also. So, in this aspect, I will tell you one incident which took place with me when I was instructor at Air Force Academy, and the weather condition was such that there was a buildup of clouding, vertical clouds were there, CB clouds were coming up, but that kind of weather had not been seen in the area in the past.
Mhm.
Now, whenever these CB cells they came up in the west side of the academy, they would always skirt around, go away towards the east.
Mm-hmm.
Now, keeping that in mind, the flight commander said, okay, the instructional sorties can go up. And basically for, teaching instrument flying to the cadets. So I was one of the, instructors who took up the cadet, and we went towards the west side. And after a few aerobatics, they found that the area was becoming darker because of the CB clouds in the vicinity. And sure enough, we got a call from the ATC saying that there's a weather warning and all aircraft are required to return back to base. Now, I was about 10 to 15 minutes away from the academy,
Mm-hmm.
and we, abandoned our exercise and we started heading back. In another 5 minutes, we were asked to hold position for endurance, because this cloud base, the cloud mass which was there,
Yes, sir.
instead of going west, it came right over the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And now it was, pouring. Thunder showers were there. It was pouring. And I mentioned to the controller that, look, my fuel is not, sufficient for me to hang around for a longer period. I need to come in. And that's the time this one particular controller, he came up and he said, my call sign was 26.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Academy 26. I will bring you back.
Mm-hmm.
I said, good. The way he mentioned it, it instilled some kind of a confidence in me that this guy will not fail me.
Mm-hmm.
And Mahesh will be surprised. He brought me on, he said, I'll give you a controlled descent. You just follow my instructions. He was so situationally aware of the positions based upon his experience in the academy,
Mm-hmm.
of, from the indications that he would get on his scope,
Mm-hmm.
that he brought me on to downwind. He told me to lower my undercarriage,
Mm-hmm.
flaps to take off. And then he said, don't turn till I tell you.
Okay.
And he kept giving me transmissions, and I was responding to his transmissions, and he exactly knew my position in relation to the runway. I was a green rated pilot, but the visibility reported was 500 meters.
Mm-hmm.
He asked me to turn, and I think I did my best instrument flying, of my career that day.
Yes.
And the cadet was just sitting, and I was doing the flying now. I spotted the hangars on the right,
Mm-hmm.
and when I looked up, the runway was 12 o'clock to me, and I came and landed. The confidence with which he brought me down,
Yes, sir.
the calmness, there was no panic in his mind. And after I landed, I said, good let down. And he responded with good landing. That was the kind of rapport that we had amongst ourselves. Later on, subsequently, I was appearing for my upgradation of QFI category. He was appearing for upgradation of his ATC category.
Yes, sir.
And when the examiner came, somehow I was chosen to fly the sortie mission for this particular examiner. And, the examiner told me multiple emergencies to be given.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one was, it started off with the speechless.
Yes, sir.
And the final thing was that, you have to tell him that your engine is flamed out.
Mm-hmm.
This guy brought me on to the low key. From there, he made me come and land the aircraft safely. Without any doubts, he got his Cat A that day.
Yes, sir.
That's the kind of, controllers that were there during that time.
Sir, I would also love to hear any instance wherein that you recall that is uppermost in your memory, where either it was a risky or a challenging situation or operationally very, very important mission where you recall an air traffic controller's contribution.
Okay, though, while I did not participate, as a pilot in the 71 war, I was part of the support system for the pilots who were going out for the missions. And one of my roles during that time was to be in the ATC to monitor the progress of the aircraft going out on the missions. And that is where my interaction with the controllers was such that I found them to be well focused on the mission, in spite of the various, missions going on from various places, the RT natter that was going on. In spite of that, to give clear, concise instructions to the pilots from that particular base, I thought the controllers did a wonderful job during that time. And it was possible because the adaptability from a peacetime environment to the wartime situations was so seamless that because the practices that you keep doing during peacetime condition you to go on into that mission, uh, both as a pilot and as a controller, without any hiccups.
Yeah, in fact, I was curious to know about that, and you preempted me. I wanted to actually ask you that the demands during the operations and exercises are different as compared to a day-to-day flying. So I wanted to know if you felt that the controllers were able to switch comfortably, their adaptability, and I think you have mentioned
Yes,
that is one of the.
I think when we talk about this kind of an adaptability, it is also because of the flexibility, the inbuilt flexibility of the Air Force.
Yes, sir.
So that conditions you to be prepared for any kind of a situation.
Thanks, sir. So before we wrap up the episode today, a question which I would like to ask you is, what is your message to the young controllers? Because I'm sure many of them would be listening to this episode. What do you think is your message, not only to the controllers, but also probably a piece of advice to the young aviators?
Mahesh, having been the deputy commandant at the Air Force Academy, where the air traffic control school was also co-located,
Yes, sir.
I have always been of the opinion, and I tried to bring in that kind of a culture in the controllers who were under training over there. Is that you have to know the mind of the kind of pilot that you're going to be controlling. Now, in a training environment where a trainee is a rookie guy, you can't put a rookie controller there.
Yeah.
But when the rookie controller is an understudy to an experienced controller, that is where he learns the ropes, the tricks of the trade, to say. And that is very important. Like I said in the beginning, your diction must be clear. You should be able to converse and communicate with the pilot on the radio telephony in a very clear manner. There should be no oohs and ahs and all that coming in when you're giving an instruction on the RT.
I think the pilot also would be able to judge your confidence.
So the calmness with which you transmit gives the confidence to the pilot in the cockpit that here is a guy who will bring me back in any situation, whatever it may be, in any kind of weather, in any kind of emergency. This is the guy who will bring me back. And invariably, my experience has been that, barring maybe an odd controller, and that is good for any other branch also, most of them were very professionally oriented towards the job. without any hesitation, they would, take on that responsibility to give those instructions that are required. Sometimes, the flying supervisor who is supposed to be in the ATC, he may have, gone for a break and something happens. To give you an example, I just got airborne and I got a crisp call from the ATC, from the controller, change over to so-and-so channel, cadet in emergency.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the flying supervisor was not in the ATC at that point of time. He had maybe gone for a break. And as I switched over there, I heard this cadet saying, my RPM gauge is reading 0, but I can hear my engine running.
Uh-huh.
And before that, someone else, not the controller, not the flying supervisor, had asked him to jettison canopy and eject.
Okay.
Now, this controller knew that a supervisor has just got airborne, that he will handle the situation. So he quickly transmitted to me. And of course, we recovered that aircraft safely. But that is the kind of situational awareness.
I think being ahead of the situation in terms of anticipating what if something happens,
Yes.
how would you, and never allow the air situation or the air traffic situation to reach that stage where it becomes unwieldy or irretrievable.
I've found, like I mentioned, that in my service career, I didn't come across any such situation where the controller was found wanting.
Oh, that's...
And I'll tell you, I didn't want to name, but I think it would be appropriate for me to give credit to such controllers. Then the one of the best controllers that I came across was at that point of time Flight Level Ojha.
Uh-huh.
I thought he was an exceptional controller. The other controller who was as good and as exceptional as Ojha was PC Sharma.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
He was one of the best, and added to his, competence, PC Sharma also had a very good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And he would communicate in a very jovial manner at times with the pilots to put them at ease.
Yes. I think that is one thing you mentioned also.
Lastly, I must also mention that when I was in Hashimara,
Yes, sir.
the AOC, that's the time the women officers came in. And one of the best women officers in the ATC that I came across was Rakhi Agarwal.
Uh-huh. Okay, sir.
She was a very, very good controller, calm, composed. Once I remember sudden thunder showers over the base.
Mm-hmm.
And MiG-27s flying in the air, they had to be diverted. And there was one particular person, he said, I can't divert, I don't have that fuel.
Uh-huh.
She was on the RT at that time. And she, in a very calm, cool manner, no panic, no nothing. She was just a pilot officer, flying officer at that time. And she had not much of experience also. But very composed. And she gave clear instructions to that pilot to come and land that aircraft and recover it safely.
I'm sure she would be delighted to hear this when she gets to hear this episode. So it's a wonderful profession, and it gives you the pleasure of being satisfied by bringing the aviators back home safely. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mahesh, for this very wonderful interaction that I've had with you.
Before we end the episode, so any memorable practice or some kind of anecdote that you recall since you were mentioning humor in your stations with the ATC crowd that you recall offhand?
Maybe if I can, share something which I was on a ferry.
Yes, sir.
From Air Force Academy to Tambaram.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to, have the clearance from Madras Control.
The FIC, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, very recently at that point of time, Madras was renamed as Tamil Nadu. Here we are calling Madras Control, but no response.
Mm-hmm.
And on a whim, I just said Tamil Nadu Control. And up came that RT from that guy, and he says Madras Control here. So I mean,
Yes.
there are very good controllers in the civil also. I remember in HAL
Mm-hmm.
that point of time, there was one controller, Sahasra Bude, I think his name was. So he was a very competent civil controller that I came across. I think he was one of the best that I had interacted with. I mean, he was so good that once I mentioned to him that I'm at 3,000 feet, and he was on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Sorry, Captain, you're at 1,800 feet." I mean, that's the kind of thing expects from the controller that he's keeping track of everything.
I think, sir, we had some wonderful conversation wherein you shared not only your experiences but also the attributes of good controllers, which really builds confidence in this profession. Thank you for sparing your time and making time to be on this episode, sir.
Thank you so much, Mahesh.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Tower Tales, the ATC podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and had a first-hand peek into the incredible work and life of yet another veteran controller. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to my channel on YouTube, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. This podcast is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Your feedback will help me bring you more of the content you enjoy. Join me after a fortnight for yet another engaging discussion with a veteran air traffic controller. Until then, this is Mahesh Sharma, your host, signing off for now. Safe travels and happy landings.